Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to crochet Fang the bat. Fang is a cute little bat that's perfect for Halloween or for people who love spooky things all year round. Fang can be made in sport, DK, or plush yarn and by adjusting your hook size. Today I'm going to be crocheting Fang with a 4mm crochet hook and worsted weight yarn. If you haven't already, be sure to snag the matching greeting card to make an adorable and one-of-a-kind gift that your friends and family will love. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we are starting with Fang the Bat's body and head, and we're going to be using this slate colored yarn. And the first thing that we need to do is form a magic ring. So let's review how to get a magic ring formed, and then how to make the first few single crochet stitches inside. Alright, so let's review how to form a magic ring. So we're going to start by taking a little length of our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration. Make sure you're using the correct color for the pattern that you are following along with. So I'm going to take this white and I'm going to reserve myself a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to take the end of that yarn and I'm going to stretch it so I've got about 5 inches or so of a tail. And the tail is going to be the end that is not attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got about 5 inches or so reserved of that tail, we're going to take our yarn hand. For me, that's my left hand, but if you're a left-handed crocheter, this might be your right hand. But we're going to take our yarn hand and make a bit of a finger guns here. So my index and my middle finger, I'm going to put them together and I'm going to be looking at the inside of them. Then I'm going to take that tail that I've reserved, that 5 inches, and I'm going to lay it so that it's over the lower digit on my index and my middle. And then I'll take my thumb and I'm going to press the yarn to those 2 fingers. Then I'm going to take my hook hand, which is for me my right hand, but could be your left hand. And I'm going to grab the working yarn. Once I've got that grabbed, I'll take it and I'm going to wrap it around the back side of my index and my middle finger so that it's sort of close to that top digit. I'll flip my hand over so you can see. So I want it to be close to my top digit, so you can see it's closer to the 2 tops of my fingers here. So we're going to wrap that around. And then once we've got it around the top digit of those 2 fingers, we're going to bring it so that it goes behind our thumb again. So I use my thumb and I pinch that second wrap in place. Then we're going to keep wrapping, this time going around the lower digit on our 2 fingers. So I'll flip my hand over so you can see these 2 wraps here. This is that one I just made, going around that lower digit. So we'll wrap around that lower digit. And then we're going to take our working yarn and one more time snug it behind our thumb. And then just pull it out of our way. So once we've done that, we should have 2 wraps and this sort of X shape on the insides of our hands. So once we have all of the yarn wrapped around our yarn hand here, we're ready to take our crochet hook in our hook hand. And we're going to flip our yarn hand over so that we're looking at the back side of our fingers. So we should have 2 wraps, one around the top digit, one around the lower digit on our yarn hand. We're going to take our hook and slip it underneath that top wrap, and then use the hook part to snag that lower wrap and bring it underneath the top wrap. Then we're going to take both of our hands and we're going to flip them over so that we're looking at the inside and away from our body. So I'm flipping out and away from my body. And then I'm going to bring my 2 hands together, so my yarn hand and my hook hand. I'm going to bring them so the index finger here on my hook hand can touch the back side of my yarn hand. Then using the thumb and index finger of my hook hand, I'm going to grab both the wrap on my hook and the wrap still on my fingers right where they meet. So I'm going to kind of snag the 2 of them together right there. Once I've got those pinched between my thumb and index finger on my hook hand, I can let go with my thumb and then gently slide those wraps off of my index and middle finger. So now that I've done that, let's locate both the tail, that's the end that's no longer attached to our ball of yarn, so it's got this blunt cut end on it. And we're going to kind of pull that over into the 12 o'clock position, so kind of up and away. And then let's locate the working yarn. That's the stuff still attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got those two identified, we're going to take the working yarn and begin tensioning it. So to do that, we'll take our index finger on our yarn hand. That for me is my left hand. Could be your right hand for you if you're a left-handed crocheter. And we're going to slip the working yarn over the top of our index finger. Then we'll take our middle, ring, and pinky finger on our yarn hand, and we're going to wrap those around that working yarn. Once you've done that, we also need to sandwich this working yarn in between our magic ring and our tail. So to do that, I like to take my middle finger and thumb on my yarn hand, and I'm going to grab that tail with my middle finger here. And then with my thumb, I want to grab the ring. So we don't want to grab our working yarn, which is kind of going in through that ring. We want to just get the bottom end of the ring here. And once you've got those two, we're going to kind of pinch them together. And you can see that sandwiches our working yarn in between the two of them. Once we've got those grabbed with our yarn hand, we can let go with our index and thumb on our hook hand. And the ring here that's on our hook is really loose. We'll tighten that by pulling our index finger up and away. You can see how that tightens that yarn. And then once we've done that, we're ready to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So we'll take our hook, put the yarn over our hook. So I kind of just swing around the back side there and grab it. And we're going to pull that working yarn directly through the loop on our hook. Once we've done that, you can let go. It's not going to come undone. It won't come untied, which is very comforting because we've spent all this time creating it. The last thing we need to do before we're ready to begin is we're going to take the tail, and you can see it's threaded through our magic ring. We're going to take that tail and we're going to pull it out from the center of that ring. And from here, we're ready to begin working in the magic ring. We also need to work over the tail as well. So we'll take that ring and we'll take the tail and we're going to set them together so that we are working over both of these strands, the ring and the tail. All right, you are ready to go ahead and continue on in your pattern. Alright, so now that we have our magic ring formed, we're ready to go ahead and start in on round 1. And if you look at the top left-hand corner, you'll see round 1's instructions are up there. They're going to stay in that top left-hand corner throughout the video, so feel free to reference the top corner or the written pattern that you already have access to. Alright, so for round 1, we need to put 6 SC in MR. And when I translate that, what that means is we need to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring and the tail that we use to tie it. And then that number in parentheses at the very end is telling us that we need 6 stitches total at the end of round 1. So let's go ahead and make our first single crochet stitch. We're going to take our crochet hook and we're going to be going through both the ring and under the tail we use to tie the ring. So I like to hold them in my yarn hand kind of together. And I'll take my crochet hook and I'm going to push it from front to back through that ring and underneath that tail. And then I need to yarn under, meaning I'm going to put the yarn under my hook. And I'm going to kind of rotate my hook so I can use the hook part to grab that yarn and then pull it through the ring and up into a nice tall loop on my crochet hook. Then I need to yarn over, meaning I'm going to put the yarn over my crochet hook. And then using the hook again, I'm going to draw it through those 2 loops on my crochet hook. And that forms our first single crochet stitch. And if you kind of turn it on its side, you can see it's this little V shape. And we need to mark that stitch as well. So we're going to take our stitch marker and slip it through both sides of that little V and then lock it in place. So there's our first single crochet stitch. We're going to continue forming them in that same way. So for our next, we'll take our hook, again go through that ring and underneath the tail. Then we're going to yarn under, and draw through and up into a nice tall loop on our hook, and then yarn over. And that forms our second single crochet. So you can see we have another little V shape coming out of that first one. So we're going to keep adding single crochet stitches until we have 6 stitches total. So there's my third. There's my fourth. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's my fifth. And I have one more to make. There's my 6th single crochet stitch. And if you've lost track, you can always turn your work on the side and count these little V shapes. I have 6, so I'm good to go. So to move on to round 2, we need to do the magic part of our magic ring, which is to take that tail we've been working over, and by holding our work in our hook hand, pull that tail pretty tightly, which is going to close off that first round into a circle and makes it so the last stitch we made is really close to the first stitch we have marked, which is good because for round 2, that's where our first single crochet stitch needs to go. Alright, so for round 2, we need to make 6 INC, and then we'll have 12 stitches at the end of round 2. So what an INC means is to increase. And to do that, we're going to be putting 2 single crochet stitches in each of the 1 single crochet stitches from the first round. So our first stitch is already marked for us, so we're going to slip the stitch marker out, but keep your eye on where it was because we're going to be putting our hook through. So I'll take my stitch marker out. And then to make my first increase, I'm going to make a single crochet stitch in that single crochet that we made and marked from round 1. So I'll take my hook and I'm going to push it underneath from front to back, both of those little legs of the V that we marked. And then from here, it's just like how we made our single crochet stitches in the magic ring. We'll yarn under and then draw our yarn through that stitch we went through and up into a nice tall loop. Then yarn over and draw through both loops on our hook. And since this is the first single crochet stitch that we've made, we need to take our stitch marker and mark that stitch as well. Then to finish our increase, we're going to be putting a single crochet stitch in that same stitch we just made one in. So to do that, we're going to go through the whole of the stitch. You can still see the little V of it, but it's smaller now because we've got a stitch already in it. I like to find where the side of the stitch is and then just push my hook through that same hole that it's in. And then yarn under and draw up a nice tall loop. And then yarn over and draw through both. So you can see I have 2 of these little V shapes coming out of the same hole, which is the stitch from last round. So we're going to continue putting 2 single crochet stitches in every stitch from round 1. To find our next stitch, you can see if we kind of rotate our work. We've already worked in this one, so we need to go to the next V shape, which is this one here. So we'll go through, yarn under and draw up a nice tall loop, then yarn over and draw through both, and then we need to add a second single crochet stitch to that same place. And you can see I have 4 stitches in 2 of the stitches from round 1. So we're just going to keep increasing, putting 2 single crochet stitches in every stitch all the way around. Alright, I am all the way around round 2. Remember, you can also double check if you lost count. You can double check how many stitches you have by turning your work on its side and counting these little V shapes. But I'm ready to move on to round 3. So before I do that, I'm going to take the magic ring tail, which is on the outside or wrong side of our work, and I'm going to give it one final pull to sort of tighten it a little bit. So then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to give this magic ring tail a trim. I'm not going to cut it all the way off. I'm just going to cut so that it's not hanging next to my working yarn. You can of course discard anything you've cut. I find that keeps it out of my way as I continue working. So we'll flip our work back over and we're ready for round 3. So round 3, we've got a new skill that we need to learn. So if you look at the top left-hand corner, you see we've got another set of parentheses. So we've got the number at the end, but then we have some instructions inside of some here at the beginning of our instructions. So what that's saying is that we need to do everything inside of the parentheses in the order it is in the parentheses. And then the number outside is telling us how many times we need to repeat that repetition pattern. So we'll start with what we know. We're going to put one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of our round. So we'll take our stitch marker out, make our single crochet stitch, and then of course mark that stitch. So there's our one single crochet stitch. Then in the next stitch of the round, we need to place an increase. So we're going to go to that next stitch. And remember, an increase is when we put 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch. So there's my increase. And that's everything inside of the parentheses once. If you look outside, we need to repeat everything inside of the parentheses 6 times total, which will give us 18 stitches at the end of round 3. So let's start that repetition pattern over again. We'll put one single crochet stitch in the next stitch of our round. And then in the stitch after, we'll put an increase, so 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch. And that is a second repetition, so 2 times. We're going to keep repeating that pattern. 1 single crochet stitch, and then an increase. There's 3 repetitions. Once you have all 18 stitches from round 3, we can move on to round 4. So round 4, we've got another set of parentheses to repeat. So we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. So here's my first single crochet stitch, and I'll mark that. And then in the next stitch, I'll put another single crochet stitch. So that's 1 single crochet stitch, a second single crochet stitch, and then an increase after that. Some people get confused when they see 2 single crochet and think, oh, I need to increase. The pattern will always say INC for an increase. So if you see a 2, it means to put 1 single crochet stitch and then a second single crochet stitch back to back. So 1, 1 increase. And we're going to keep repeating that pattern of 1 single crochet stitch, 1 single crochet stitch, increase, another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around round 4. So that's 1 single crochet stitch, 1 single crochet stitch, increase. Alright, that wraps up round 4. Round 5, we've got another parentheses pattern. And this time we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. So 1 single crochet stitch, 2 single crochet stitches, 3 single crochet stitches, and then an increase. So here's my first single crochet stitch. And again, I'm going to mark that. Always mark the first stitch of our round. Two, 3, and then increase. And then just like the last 2 rounds with these parentheses, we're going to repeat this pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions. So 1, 2, 3, increase. Alright, that's the end of round 5 for me. So for round 6, another parentheses pattern. This time we'll put 4 single crochet stitches before we put our increase. So there's my first single crochet stitch. Two, 3, and 4. And then I'll increase. And just like the last few rounds, we're going to repeat that pattern another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, that's round 6 done for me. So for round 7, 8, and 9, all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 36 stitches that we've made here for round 6. So we're going to take our stitch marker out and we're going to start each of these rows, 7, 8, and 9, the same way. Taking that marker out, placing our first single crochet stitch, and then putting that marker in, so don't forget to always mark that first stitch. And then for these next 3 rounds, we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch. So that's just a 1 to 1, no increases. So I will see you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet stitch of round 9, and we're ready to move on in our pattern. Okay, so I just made my last single crochet stitch of round 9, and you can see my piece is starting to kind of cup a little bit, so it's like a little bit of a bowl. There's a chance your piece has potentially started to bowl inside out, and a pretty good indication that it is that the magic ring tail that we cut short is on the outside of that curve, and then your stitches have this sort of line that runs through them. So if that's what your piece looks like, now's a good time to sort of flip that so the inside of the bowl has that little tail, and that the outside stitches have this X shape. They're a little tidier looking. So if that's happened to your piece, it's an easy fix. You can just flip it inside out or right side out. And we're ready to move on to round 10. So round 10, we've got another parentheses pattern. So we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of our round. There are my 5 single crochet stitches, and then an increase. then just like all the parentheses patterns we've made so far, we'll repeat this pattern another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions or 42 stitches at the end of round 10. Alright, there is my last increase on round 10. So for rounds 11 through 16, just like rounds 7 through 9, we're going to just be putting one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So just like with 7 and 9, we're going to be moving our stitch marker up at the beginning of each of those rounds. So here I am starting in on round 11. And I will see you back here when I have finished the last single crochet stitch of round 16. Alright, so I've just finished my last single crochet stitch of round 16, and next up in our pattern we need to place the safety eyes. So if you're going to be giving Fang the bat to a young child or to a pet, you may want to use embroidery floss instead of safety eyes, but if not, we can go ahead and take the loop on our hook, pull it long, and take our hook out. And then we're going to take our piece and we're going to flip it over so our stitch marker is at the back side. And then we're going to be putting the safety eyes or embroidering the face on this side. So I like to take the stem of one of my safety eyes and starting at our magic ring at the top of our piece, count down to round 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then it's the space between round 11 and 12 that our eye is going to get pushed through. So you can just take the stem and push it through the fabric. So there's one of the eyes placed. I'm going to grab my second eye and it's about 5 stitches apart from the first eye. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then in the fabric between rounds 11 and 12. So there are the eyes placed. So once you've got them where you'd like them, you can move them higher, lower, further, closer together. But once you've got them where you like, we're going to go ahead and snap the backs on the back side. So the safety eyes will come with these little plastic backs. All we need to do is push the plastic back down onto the stem of the eye on the inside. Which locks the eyes in place. Alright, so we can go ahead and flip our work back over and take our hook and go back through that loop we pulled up long, and then pull our working yarn to tighten that loop down. And we're ready for round 17. We're going to learn a new type of stitch, but let's start with what we know. We've got a parentheses pattern. We're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of our round. Alright, and then next up we need to make a DEC, which stands for decrease. So to make a decrease, we're going to be working the next 2 stitches together by single crocheting them into one stitch. So to do that, we're going to take our hook, go through our next stitch, yarn under, and draw up a loop. And then we're going to repeat that in the stitch right after. So we're going to go through the next stitch, yarn under, and draw up a loop. So you can see we have 2 loops, one coming out of each of the stitches we just worked in, and then a third loop left over from our last stitch that we made. To finish off our decrease, we'll yarn over and draw through all 3 of the loops on our hook. And you can see that takes those 2 stitches and combines them into 1 stitch for our next round. So we're going to repeat that same pattern of 5 single crochet stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then another decrease. So we're going to go through our next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop. Then do that same thing in the next stitch. And then yarn over and draw through all 3. And we're going to just keep repeating that pattern of 5 single crochet stitches followed by a decrease all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 17 for me. For round 18, we just need to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Okay, so that's round 18 done for me. Round 19, we've got another parentheses pattern. This time we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches. And then a decrease. And then we're going to repeat that sequence of 4 single crochet stitches and then decreasing 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, that's the end of round 19. Round 20, we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then a decrease. And just like last round, we're going to repeat that pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, that's the end of round 20. Round 21, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then follow that with a decrease. And then repeat that pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, so that's the end of round 21. Before we move on to round 22, I'm going to add some stuffing to the inside of Fang's body. So just like I did when I did the safety eyes, I'm going to pull that last loop long and take my crochet hook out. And then we're going to put some stuffing on the inside of the body before this opening gets too much smaller. Alright, so there's some stuffing added to the inside of the body. I'm ready to go ahead and continue on crocheting, so I'll take my hook and reinsert it into that loop we pulled up long, draw that loop down by pulling my working yarn, and we're ready for round 22. So we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next stitch of our round. And then decrease. And we're going to repeat that pattern 5 more times until we are all the way around this round. Alright, that's the end of round 22 for me. Before we make round 23, let's add just a little bit more stuffing to the inside of the body. Alright, I've got some stuffing added. Then I can take my hook, put it back in and draw down. And for round 23, which is the last round of crochet on the body, we're going to decrease in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so there was my last decrease here for round 23, and we're ready to go ahead and fasten off. So to start that, we're going to take our stitch marker out and set it aside. And then we need to make a SLST, or a slip stitch, in that next stitch, the one that we just took our marker out of. So we're going to take our hook and, just like we would for a single crochet, go from front to back through that loop, yarn under and draw up a loop. But then we're going to take the loop we just created and continue pulling it through the only other loop left on our hook, which makes a slip stitch. Then we're ready to cut our working yarn, so we can cut a tail. We don't need a very long tail, maybe 6 inches or so. And then we're going to take that slip stitch that we made, the loop on our hook, and use our hook to pull that loop longer until the end we cut goes all the way through. Then we can tighten that slip stitch down by pulling that tail, which ties a little bit of a knot. Then, to close off this last round, we need to take that tail that we just threaded. We need to take that tail that we just cut and thread it through the eye of a yarn needle. Then, to close this last round off, we're going to take that yarn needle that we've got threaded with the tail we cut. We're going to be working directly to the left of where our slip knot is, and sewing up through the front loop of each of these decreases. So what is the front loop? When we've been crocheting, we've been working through both the front and the back loop. Let me use this blue needle so you can see. Here on my needle, I have actually 2 loops, the little legs of those V's. So the one that's closest to the inside of our work, where the stuffing is, that's called the back loop. And the one closest to the surface of our work, or the front, is the front loop. So as we sew through each of these front loops, you can see I'm pulling them up here with that blue needle, we're going to use them to cinch closed this last round. So we're going to take that needle we've got threaded with our tail, And to the left side of that slip knot we've tied, or slip stitch that we've made, we're going to go up through the front loop only of that next stitch, then rotate and do the same thing on the next front loop, and rotate, and just keep sewing through these front loops. Alright, so there are all 6 of those front loops sewn through. Then I'm going to hold close to where that last stitch is and pull that yarn tightly to close off that last round. And then to keep that last round securely closed, we're going to tie a knot. And to do that, we're going to take the yarn that we've got for our tail and we're going to make a little loop. And then we'll take our yarn needle and we're going to sew through a little of the fabric of our work. I like to grab right underneath that last stitch that I've sewn through. So you can see I'm just going to slip underneath that and then up through the loop that we formed on the surface of our work. And then by pulling our needle very carefully, that loop that we've sewn up through will wrap around our yarn, forming a knot. And then to hide the knot and some of the tail, we'll sew down through the center of that cinched round. It looks a lot like our magic ring at the top. We'll sew down through that cinched round and then just through the body and out through any round I'm coming up through over here. And by pulling what we've got on our yarn needle, we'll pull that knot to the inside and also hide the tail inside of the body. So once you've done that, you can unthread your yarn needle. And by taking your scissors and pulling what we just sewed through Fang's body, you can cut right next to the body, so right by the fabric of the body, which hides the tail inside, and we can discard anything that we didn't weave in. Alright, so that's Fang the bat's body done. Let's go ahead and add the face details next. So the little white shines by the eyes, the mouth, and the cheeks. And we're going to start with the detail right next to the eye. So for the eye details, we're going to take a little bit of white yarn and thread it through the eye of our tapestry needle. Then we're going to take Fang's body and send our tapestry needle down through some of the spaces next to stitches. So we don't want to sew through a stitch, we want to kind of grab one of the spots kind of in between where our stitches are. So I'm going to sew down through a space here, and I'm going to come up directly underneath the left eye. As you can see, I'm pretty much centered underneath that eye. And as I pull this through, I'm going to leave a long tail on the outside of Fang's body. I'm going to come back to this once I'm done sewing the eyes. So to make our first eye detail, we're going to kind of sew along the outside of the eye and along the top. So I'm going to send my needle down through, centered at the top of this eye, and over to the top of the left eye. And then by pulling this tail tight, it's going to sit alongside of the left eye, which adds that eye detail. And we'll repeat by kind of going in the opposite order, so from top to centered in the bottom on this eye, and sending our needle over to that same space that this white tail is hanging out of. So I'm going to sew all the way across and then come up in that same space. You can see that adds the really cute white detail on the outsides of the eyes. I can unthread my tapestry needle at this point, and to hide these 2 threads, we're going to take them and tie them together. So just like you would your shoe, or make a square knot, and pull pretty tight. And I like to double knot mine just for extra security. Then we need to trim these two tails pretty short. So I like to get pretty much right up on where I've tied that double square knot and trim. We can discard anything we didn't use. And then to make it so this knot's not on the outside of our work, I'm going to take the eye of my tapestry needle and grab the stitch directly to the right side of this knot. So just go through and slip underneath that stitch. And you can see my eye is coming up through that same space between stitches that that white is. And by pulling the fabric of the work up, it sends that knot to the inside. You can also use the eye of your needle to sort of push that knot inside of the body. And that secures the white eye detail and hides the knot. Next, let's go ahead and make the cheek details. Great, so for the cheek details, we're going to be threading some pink yarn through the eye of our tapestry needle. And then just like we did with the eyes, we're going to leave a little tail on the outside in the space between some of our stitches. So I'm going to just pick, here's a good spot. And then we're going to sew just a straight stitch to the outsides of each eye. So I'm going to come up here about 2 stitches out from that eye, and then leave a little bit of a tail on the outside of my work. Then I'm going to sew down to make the cheek, and sew across to the other side. And then sew down. And we're going to want to come back up through that same space between stitches, just like we did with the eye detail. You can see that adds the cheek detail. We can go ahead and unthread our tapestry needle. And then we'll do another double square knot with these 2 pink tails. Trim them short. And then just like we did before, go to the stitch directly to the right of the space between stitches, and then up through that same space that you went down through, and pull the fabric of your work up and then push those tails to the inside. Alright, there are the cheek details added. Last thing to sew is the mouth, so let's get that attached. Let's start with the mouth itself. So we're going to take some black yarn or embroidery floss. I'm using yarn. And then the smile is going to be at an angle here underneath Fang's eyes. So just like we did with everything so far, down through the spaces between 2 stitches. And I'm going to start by coming up just a little closer to the left eye here. Leave a tail on the outside. And Fang's mouth is kind of curved, so I'm going to sew up about 1 round and then pretty close to where the left eye is. So I'm going to go up and into this round here. And then sew through that same space that I came up through or went down through when I started the smile. You can see that forms the mouth. Can unthread my needle, tie another square knot, so there's the smile, and then we just need to add the fangs for Fang the Bat. I'm going to thread some white yarn through my tapestry needle. We're going to sew 2 straight stitches to make Fang the Bat's fangs. So I'm going to, again, go down through the space between some stitches. I'm going to sew this lower one first. So I'm going to go really close to where the smile is for this first fang. And remember, leave a little on the outside. And then it's going to be a pretty small stitch, so I'm going to sew basically right down and then come up to make the second fang. And I'll sew down to make the second fang. And then up through the same space I came down through. And you can see that forms fangs, the bat's teeth. We can go ahead and unthread our tapestry needle. And again, tie another double square knot. If you pull too tightly on your square knot and one of your stitches gets really short, you can take the back end of your tapestry needle and sort of pull it to loosen it a little bit. Sometimes I pull too tightly. Alright, so you can see that is Fang the Bat's face details done. Let's move on to the next part of our pattern. Okay, so next up we need to make Fang the Bat's wings, and I'll show you how to make one, and then we actually will need to make two, so you'll need to come back and make a second one, and then we can get them all attached. Okay, so we're going to begin with this black colored yarn, and by forming a magic ring, okay, now that I have my magic ring formed, we're ready to start on round 1, where we need to put 4 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. Alright, there are my 4 single crochet stitches. I'm going to pull the tail to close off round 1. And I'm ready for round 2, where the first stitch we're going to make is an increase. So we can take our stitch marker out and then increase in that first stitch. Alright, there's my increase, and then we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the remaining 3 stitches of the round. Okay, that's round 2. Before we move on to round 3, let's give our magic ring tail one final tug, and then trim it short, but not all the way off. And you can discard anything that you didn't use. That keeps it out of our way as we continue working around. Alright, round 3, we're going to start again with another increase. Then we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. Okay, that's round 3 done. Round 4, we're going to begin by an increase in the first stitch. And then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. Alright, that's round 4. Round 5, again, starts with another increase. then we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of the round. Okay, that's round 5 done. Round 6 again starts with another increase. And then we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 7 stitches of the round. Alright, that's round 6 done. Round 7, we've got a parentheses pattern to repeat, where we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. Then follow that with an increase. And we're going to repeat that pattern 2 more times. So one single crochet stitch, 2 single crochet stitches, increase, and one last time. Alright, that's round 7 done. Round 8, we're going to start by putting one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then in the next stitch, we're going to put 3 single crochet stitches. So it's sort of like an increase with one additional stitch going into the same stitch from the previous round. So 1, 2, 3 stitches. And then we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the 10 remaining stitches of the round. Be really careful, the stitch right next to where all 3 of those single crochet stitches are in the same stitch. Sometimes I miss this one, so be doubly sure that you're not skipping over a stitch. Alright, that's round 8. Round 9, we're going to start by putting one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then we're going to single crochet 3 together. So last round we made 3 stitches in the same space. Now we're going to decrease 3 of them together. So to do that, we'll go through our next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, go through the next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then go through the last stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop. So you can see we've got loops coming out of those 3 stitches we made in the same stitch from the last round, and then the 4th loop being the one left over from our last single crochet stitch. To single crochet these 3 together, just like with a decrease, we'll yarn over and draw through all 4 loops on our hook. After that, we're going to make one single crochet stitch in the next 10 stitches of the round. Alright, that's round 9. I'm ready for round 10, where we're going to make another single crochet 3 together. So we're going to go through the first stitch of the round, yarn over, drop a loop, next stitch, and the 3rd stitch, and then draw through all 4 of the loops on our hook, and then mark that stitch since it's the first one of our round. Then we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. Follow that with a decrease. Then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. Okay, that's round 10 done. Round 11, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 11, and round 12, which is our last round. Again, just 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's the last round of single crochet for the wing, so we can take our stitch marker out. And just like with the body, we're going to make a slip stitch where the marker just was. And then we need to cut a long tail to sew with. 6 to 8 inches should do the trick. Then just like with the body slip stitch, we're going to pull until that tail we've cut goes through the loop. And then we can tighten that slip stitch down by pulling. And then we're also going to put a little bit of stuffing inside of the wing. We don't need very much. We want the wings to stay mostly flat. So I'm going to grab just a little pinch of stuffing here and add it to the inside of the wing. And then kind of squish it between my fingers so it stays flat. Alright, that is one of the wings done. Let's make one more and then get them attached to Fang the bat's body. Alright, I have both of Fang's wings crocheted and I'm ready to get them attached. So I'm going to go ahead and start with one of the wings. And I'm going to thread the tail that we cut through the eye of my tapestry needle. Then I'm going to grab Fang's body. And the wings are sort of in line with the bottom of the eye, and then are going to be placed on either side of the body itself. So I've got this one lined up. So to sew the wing on, we're going to be sewing through both layers of the fabric of the wing and into the fabric of the body itself. So I'm going to start at the top of the wing. I'm going to sew through the fabric underneath where the wing sits on the side of the body. And then pass the needle through both layers of the fabric. And then I'm just going to keep repeating this, sewing through some of the fabric of the body, sewing through both layers of the wing, until I have sewn all the way down the wing, attaching it completely to the side of the body. Alright, so I have the wing completely attached to the side of Fang's body, and I'm ready to secure the wing and weave the tail in. So to do that, I'm going to tie another surface knot, just like I did when I closed up the bottom of the body. So to do that, I'm going to loop the black yarn over the surface of my work, then sew into some of the fabric of the body itself, and up through the center of that loop that I've made. And then of course by pulling gently, that loop will tighten around our working yarn. Then we can send this tail to the inside of the body and out through any old place, doesn't matter really where. And then by pulling our yarn, it'll send the knot to the inside. Then we can unthread our tapestry needle, and by pulling that tail and trimming close to the fabric of the body, we'll weave the tail in. You can discard anything you didn't weave in. And that is one of the wings attached. We need to repeat on the other side with the other wing. Alright, so next up we need to get Fang the bat's feet made, and they're going to be crocheted directly onto the body at round 19. So I'm going to take my hook, and starting at the magic ring at the top, I'm going to count down to round 19, making sure I'm counting down where the face is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And I'm going to insert my hook so that it goes into Fang's body upside down. So I'm going to be inserting my hook in along the outside of the eye and just straight into the fabric of the work. So it's on the outside and is so that the hook part is facing the bottom of Fang's body. Then I'm going to attach some black yarn. So to do that, I'm going to take the yarn and make a little loop out of it. And then I'm going to put that loop on my hook and then pull that loop through Fang's body. And then I'm going to take the tail from that loop and pull that tail through the loop on my hook. And then tighten. That secures the yarn to the body so we don't have to worry about anything coming untied. Then we're going to take our hook and go through the same place where we just tied on. Begin tensioning our yarn. Then we're going to yarn over and draw a loop through the fabric of our work. And then we're ready to go ahead and begin making row 1 of the leg. So to do this, we're going to chain 4 stitches. So to chain 4 stitches, we're going to yarn over and draw our working yarn through the loop on our hook. And that makes a chain stitch. So we need to do that 3 more times. 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to make a slip stitch in the space right next to where we attached on. So I'm going to go into the fabric of the body and slip stitch just like we did when we closed off the body and the wings. So draw through and then draw that loop through the only other loop on my hook. Then I'm going to chain 4 more stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then slip stitch again in the next stitch on the body. And that forms one of the feet, so I can cut a long tail and pull the loop on my hook until that tail goes through. And then I'm going to tighten that by pulling the tail. And then we need to weave in both the tail we just cut and the tail left over from when we fastened on. So I'm going to start with the fasten on tail. Thread it through the eye of my tapestry needle. Then I'm just going to sew it down and into Fang's body and out through just any old place, pulling tightly. And do the same thing with the longer tail that we just cut. Sew it down into Fang's body, pulling tightly. And then I can pull tight and trim both of those tails. And that completes the first foot. So we need to do the same thing starting on the other side. So when we insert our hook, we're going to insert so that the hook goes in even with the inside of the next eye. So we'll insert through that same space. And then from here, it's just like how we made our first foot. We'll fasten on, chain 4, and then slip stitch. So let's go ahead and get that other foot made, and then we can move on in our pattern. Alright, so last up we need to make the ears, and we need to make 2 of them. So we'll make the first one together, and then you'll need to make a second before we get them attached. And we're going to be working with this same color we used on Fang's body, this sort of slate gray color, and begin with another magic ring. Alright, and we're ready for round 1, and we're going to place 4 single crochet stitches inside of the magic ring. There are my 4 single crochet stitches. I'm going to pull the tail to close off round 1. And I'm ready for round 2, where I'm going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then mark that stitch. And I'm going to increase in the next stitch. And repeat that pattern one more time. So 1 single crochet, and then 1 increase. And there's round 2 done. Before I move on to round 3, I'm going to pull that magic ring tail really tight one last time, and then trim it short, but not all the way off, just to keep it out of my way as I keep working around. Alright, round 3, we're going to repeat that same pattern, 1 single crochet stitch and then increase, but this time we're going to do it 3 times. So 1 single crochet stitch, increase, 1 single crochet, increase, and then one last time, 1 single crochet, increase. And we're ready for round 4, which is the last round. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So there's my first, and my second, and then an increase. I'll repeat that 2 more times. Alright, so that's the last round of single crochet. We'll fasten off by slip stitching to the stitch that our marker was just in. Then we need to cut a long tail to sew with. 6 or 8 inches ought to do it. That's always my standard default number that I tend to cut. Then we're going to pull that slip stitch all the way through and then tighten. And then I like to flip my ear over and flatten it so that the tail I just cut is on either this or that corner. Doesn't matter which corner, just so it's along the edge of where we've got it flattened. And then we need to get a little purple yarn and add the embroidery detail here on the ear itself. So we're going to go ahead and take our tapestry needle and thread it with a little bit of this purple colored yarn. And then we're going to sew into the opening at the bottom of the ear and into a little bit of round 2. And then just like when we did the face detail, leave a little tail on this purple here. And I'm going to sew a straight stitch just straight down into some of the fabric of that last round of single crochet that we made. And then I'm going to come back up through where I came up through the first time, so this point at the top of the ear. And I'll go down into the next stitch next to where I made my first straight stitch. Come back up through that same stitch at the top. And then sew down one more time next to the second stitch that I made. And then we're going to kind of repeat that with some more stitches on the other side. So we'll go back up through. And then down on the other side of where we've just been sewing. Let's do one more on this side. And then we're going to make a long straight stitch along the bottom to sort of hide where all of these separate stitches are. So I'm going to go up through where the stitch on the farthest from the center on this side is. And then I'm just going to sew a straight stitch along the bottom where all of these stitches are. Which sort of hides where all the different stitches go into the ear. Alright, once we've got all those stitches sewed, we can unthread our tapestry needle. And then just like we did with the face, we're going to tie these two tails together with a double square knot. And then trim them close. And discard anything you didn't end up needing. And that knot is actually on the inside of where the ear is, so it's going to hide out inside the ear. We don't have to worry about pulling the knot through the fabric of our work. Okay, so that is one of the ears done. Let's make one more and then get them attached to Fang's body. Alright, I have both of my ears done and embroidered, and I'm ready to get them attached. So let's start with one of the ears. We'll get it threaded through the tail through the eye of our tapestry needle. And then just like we did with the wing, we're going to be sewing through both layers of the fabric of the ear as we attach them to Fang's body. So we're going to position them so they're along the top of the body. Mine are in line with my wings as well. And then just like with the wings, we'll sew through some of the fabric of Fang's body, and then through both layers of fabric of Fang's ear. And we're just going to keep sewing until we've sewn all the way across and the ear is completely attached. Alright, I have sewn the ear all the way on, and I need to secure it by tying another surface knot. So I'm going to loop the yarn over the surface of my work, sew through a little bit of the fabric of the work and up through that loop, and then pull gently to tie a knot, and then weave that tail into the body, unthread my tapestry needle, and trim. And that is one of the ears attached. We need to repeat on the other side with the other ear. Alright, and that wraps up Fang the Bat's tutorial.